everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Fashion Grunge podcast. I am Lauren.
Hi, I'm Jai.
What's up, everyone? We're really excited to talk about a documentary this time. We only did one before on the Sonic Youth Nirvana tour, and now we're going to be talking about Punk Attitude by Don Letts. It came out in 2005, but I figure since it's kind of about the punk era, it does lead into the 90s that we deserve to explore it a little bit. Some music.
Yeah, because we get to talk about your favorite band, that's why.
Yeah, we get to talk about Nirvana a little bit at the end there. I mean, it is kind of true what they kind of say about Nirvana, I guess. Like,
Yeah,
kind of taking all these elements of the past and putting it into this like one band, which is pretty cool. Yeah, but just outside of that, Jai, how's it going? Like, what's up in your world?
Well, I basically I was thinking this weekend, about 2020 and, how it was meant to look completely different to to how it is now.
Yep.
And, you have, plants. I'm sure it wasn't the only one. Everyone was, excited because it's, 2020 is meant to be, an epic year. But actually, the only things that I've noticed that happen instead of, my expectations were that I'm in a codependent relationship with sugar. Um, like, yeah, we talked about how much cake and chocolate I eat. I became obsessed with flowers. Oh, I have become obsessed with flowers, and I'm buying flowers every single week.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
it's crazy. I drink more red wine than ever, even more than when I lived in the UK. And so, yeah, not really what I expected for 2020, but there you go. Yeah.
Wow. That's a visual. I'm just picturing you like drinking red wine on the couch, like reading or just on the computer with like tons of sugar.
Oh, that's the other one. Yes, of course, I forgot that one. I spend way too much time on the sofa and not actually moving as much. And to my surprise, I thought that I will become really active because I have time to work out. Right, I can't do workouts at home, video ones or whatever. But definitely spending too much time on the couch.
It's really funny. I mean, yeah, I think everyone is. Oh, for me, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm not doing. I just watch a lot more, like TV or just like really bad TV. I guess I listen to like more podcasts and stuff. But I guess This has been really cool creating this podcast literally right before the pandemic because there wasn't really a pandemic. I wanted to start it before anyway, but it kind of works out that of everything that I do and not do, I mean, because obviously I am a photographer, so it's kind of hampered I like to shoot people. I do like to shoot. I've been shooting more landscapes lately, but with photo labs being closed down, I kind of just don't want to take a chance and like not knowing, the mail can be kind of crazy sometimes. So I haven't been shooting anything. So I'm like, oh, cool. The podcast has kind of been, something to like look forward to. And it's cool that I get to talk about different films. So I kind of like that this is the time that it started. So
Yeah, it definitely worked out for you quite all right.
yeah, I mean, it's cool. Yeah, I mean, people need things to listen to. People now
Exactly.
have time to watch the films that we talk about or maybe explore the documentaries that we're talking about. So it's cool. I mean, people have the time to kind of learn something new. So I'm learning things new too, watching films over and kind of going, into different sections of like what I used to listen to or watch. So it's cool. It's been cool, but nothing has changed all that much. I just watch a lot more. I'm trying to read more, which I try to do all the time anyway. But yeah, it's just kind of obviously like freelance work is non-existent at the moment.
Non-existent.
So I'm kind of just
Exactly.
stuck inside
Yeah.
anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just wish I had the option of going to like a movie theater. You know what I mean? Like, and I miss seeing, I don't really think I thought I would miss like physically seeing my friends because I'm talking to them. So I'm like, oh, it can't be that bad. But I think the other day I actually was like, I'm really sad that I just can't see anyone, even just for like 5 minutes. Like it's
Yeah.
just,
Well,
and like,
yeah. I
people are
mean,
far away and like, it's just like,
it's like we talk quite often on the phone, and we obviously do this together. But I still miss you. It's not the
yeah,
same as like getting food to, like a coffee or
yeah, or like hanging
watching
out at your
films.
house or
Yeah,
actually just
exactly.
recording this in real life, like just watching it together and just, recording an episode. So yeah, really, hopefully things will get better sooner rather than later. But yeah, just the time moves really slow, but yet fast at the same time. It's really
Yeah,
weird. It's really
yeah,
strange. But yeah, I started watching Normal People on Hulu, which is what Jai told me to watch. So
yeah,
I'm like halfway through. It's really good. I recommend it for people wanting something. It's really good. It's a really different kind of story. So I
yeah.
like it. Yeah, I like it.
Oh,
It's
I'm
a
so
good
glad to
it's a good
hear. So glad.
departure. Yeah, it's a good departure. I thought it was going to be really intense because of Hulu. I feel like has very extreme shows. Like they have shows like this, which is kind of different for them, but they have like Handmaid's Tale, which is crazy, and then they have a lot of like horror and stuff like. They have a lot of like really weird kind of like suspense thriller horror stuff. So
But wait, but it's not a Hulu show, is it?
well, I mean, Hulu bought it, so I'm talking about like it's a
Right.
BBC show, but Hulu
It's
bought
a
it,
BBC. Yeah, yeah.
almost like how Netflix bought Peaky Blinders, but it's a BBC show.
Right.
Like for some reason, Hulu bought it and not Netflix. So like, but the things that Hulu buys, this is like a new kind of era for them. Because same with like Little Fires Everywhere is more like in this kind of drama space that I think they want more shows like because they have so
Yeah.
many that are like really intense, crazy, and then they have like the horror like thriller ones and then they have like this. So it's cool. I think they're
Yeah. It's
expanding their
good for them because yeah, Netflix buys everything first, and
yeah, they have so much money.
they had. What about Fleabag? That wasn't
That's
on Netflix
Amazon.
either. That was on Amazon. Yeah, they did
Yeah.
obviously really well with that.
Yeah, a lot of people have Amazon Prime. I don't think I've
Yes,
ever found an Amazon Prime show that I've liked. And I've tried
you told me
maybe like
that. Yeah.
5 or 6. Yeah, it's really weird. I don't know if like that's I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. Hulu, like it's a hit or miss for me. Netflix is always pretty good. I feel like I usually like the Netflix shows. It depends if I don't, but they usually have pretty good buyers. Like they're more into my like what I like to watch, I guess,
Yeah.
than the Netflix shows. But it's cool. So yeah, I'm discovering
Cool.
new stuff and yeah, I am excited to get into this documentary. It's on YouTube for those out there who want to see it. I have it on DVD. I bought it a long time ago. But yeah, you can watch it on YouTube for now, and I'll put the link in the notes so people can find it. And this documentary is directed by Don Letts, and he is a DJ. He's mentioned in the film a little bit, but he
Oh,
is
he's the one. Right. I know what
yeah,
you're
he has
saying.
like the
Sorry.
dreads and like
Yeah.
Chrissy
Yeah.
Hine, yeah, is talking about him.
So
And
cool.
yeah, he directed actually several Clash music videos, and he has this book that I really want to get, and it's super expensive on Amazon. Like I must have only had like one printing because it's like $100 for a paperback. But it's called Culture Clash: Dread Meets Punk Rockers, and it's about him being the first generation British-born black in his family from Jamaica, and how he kind of like assimilated his Jamaican culture into like inner city London. And he's
Yeah.
64 right now. So it's really cool. He really influenced punk in a giant way.
I
Like
know.
it's really
So
cool.
crazy.
And it's crazy and it's awesome that he did this documentary too. So
Yeah, I think it's
yeah.
insane that like reggae was such a huge influence, and
Hmm.
that's all they were like listening to in London. Obviously, maybe not in the US, but it
No,
totally
I
makes
don't think in
sense,
the
you know.
US. Yeah,
But it
but
makes sense
definitely in
because
England.
if
Yeah.
he was a DJ and there was like this club where all these punk musicians used to hang out, like it's amazing that it's kind of weird to think that reggae, you know? I mean, kind of see
Hmm.
the influence, I suppose, but um, that was really cool to know.
Yeah, you see it also in one of my top favorite films. This is England. That soundtrack
Yeah.
is a lot of like reggae punk, like reggae inspired punk, and there's a lot
Wait,
of
so
reggae in that film.
he made that film?
No. He didn't make that film.
Oh, I was gonna say.
No,
I
I'm
was
just
like,
saying
what?
that like that's another aspect of like you see the reggae influence in that film in England in that time. So like
Yeah.
you see it again. It's really cool that like even they identify as like skinhead punks, they still listen to this like reggae music. Like they still have that like reggae punk, like the roots of it, you know. It's really cool. I love This Is England. And I've seen
Such a
part of the
cool.
show, but I haven't seen all of it. I've seen, is it 86? I think they have a
Yeah, I'd love
90.
to watch it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's on Amazon Prime. I think I saw it.
I don't have it anymore.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think the only place I've ever seen it is Amazon Prime that you can watch it. It might be on YouTube. I literally search YouTube for anything first because they have a lot on there. So it's a like this documentary I didn't think I'd be able to find because I was like I really want to talk about it, but maybe no one has heard of it or can see it. But I'm glad it's on YouTube. So yeah, Don Letts is pretty dope, the director. So that's super exciting. So yeah, this film, obviously Jai just found out about it because I told her to watch it for this episode, but I saw it on IFC when I think I was in college, maybe, or maybe out of college, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so cool. And then I just found out the name of it and like went to buy it on DVD. And I think around that time is when I started listening to a lot of the music in here. Like I never knew about the beginning. Like in the beginning of the film, you kind of see the origins of punk through Chuck Berry and through like the Kinks and like more of the American side because they do go into England as well, but they kind of start from like, you know, hippies or like rebelling against the war and how like it's really the film is about the attitude of punk
Yeah.
wrapped up in the music, but really how it has this like rebellious spirit, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's really
it's pretty
cool.
cool that they cover quite a lot actually. I feel like they did a really good job like telling the story.
Yeah, and getting a lot of unknown bands that I definitely had never heard of in
I
that
know, like
beginning. I
the
was like, who are all
Screamers,
these?
they were talking
Yeah,
about a band that apparently was really influential, and like it's sad that they never recorded, and so there
yeah.
is no record of them. You know, they
And they
look
show that
cool.
one
They
little
seem
clip, and I was
cool.
like, this looks awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's super cool. But then they go into Count Five, Psychotic Reaction is another really great song. It totally has that like 60s kind of Beach Boy kind of feel, but then you can kind of see how the riffs like turned into like sped up, you know, like I think Thurston Moore mentions like sped up Chuck Berry riffs is kind of like what punk started out being, you know, it kind of was just like more sped up rock and roll from the 50s, which is super
yeah.
cool.
I mean, it sort of seems like they all influence each other, and like obviously this is like before internet and everything, so like they will have to go to an actual show to see that band to then be like super inspired by them, you know, because there was no like internet or like any other way. I guess like I suppose records, but you know, like back then as well, I don't think it was that easy. It was like to find good records of everything that was out there, you know, because
Yeah, it would have to be like word of mouth, I guess, you know?
yeah, like they said, like they even mentioned it that you will hear about these bands by like on the street, or you'll see like a
Hmm.
flyer for a show, and like you know, it's not like easy. Well, I suppose it was the Stooges first, but it's not like they heard about him and they were like buying the record. It would be like if they happened to be in that city and saw him play,
Yeah, and
then it would
somebody,
be
yeah,
like
came to the show.
yeah, I feel that's like so cool. Like they talk about like a few people that were in certain gigs that then went and like
I
formed their own
know.
bands, you
Wasn't that
know?
so next level?
I
That I
know.
think it's the one, is it the one in England where they said like Joy Division was there, Morrissey was there,
Yeah, it
like
was.
everyone
I
formed
think
a
it
band.
was the Ramones, right? When they played there, and I think it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it must have been Joy Division and definitely Sex Pistols. Yeah, like a few other bands basically. But apparently that happened in New York too. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
they will go to see a band and then they'll all decided to like form their own bands. So there was so much great music, and they all did like. That's what kind of like about it that I suppose it's different now because you know like it's so easy to just copy because you
Yeah,
have
it's
so
true.
much out there and you have like internet, you have YouTube and Instagram and whatever. Like back then you couldn't really copy it, I suppose. I felt like I mean I'm sure you could, but it was more about being really inspired and then take that and do something completely different with your own touch, you know?
Yeah,
'Cause they
exactly.
didn't sound the same. They were all slightly different. I mean, a lot of them were like completely like, you know, not
Yeah.
like similar at all.
That's what
Yeah,
I find
that's
that's really
inspiring.
interesting about the genre throughout this whole film is that it kind of points out that there is no punk sound. Like it really is not really definable by just one word. You know, it's got so it just basically the rebellion and the spirit is what's important to the movement. It's not really like the sound. It's not like you have to sound like Sex Pistols or like the Velvet Underground. Like they talk about the Velvet Underground and like they're completely different. And they were doing something totally weird. It was like this weird like slowed art pop. They had Nico in there. Andy Warhol had like kind of promoted them. So they had like this totally weird vibe, but everybody loved it. Like Patti Smith, she's not definable. Like,
No, yeah, no,
she's like a
exactly.
poet, like she's spoken word. She's almost like, I mean, like you could say that about Bjork nowadays. Like she's not definable. You can't really tell
No,
me like
you
what
can't
she
really put
does.
her in a box and be like,
Yeah,
you
this
know.
is what she does. So it's really cool. And also, I thought that you might have gotten a huge kick out of the fact that Iggy from the Stooges was like
Yes,
blown away after seeing
by
the
the
Doors.
doors. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
After seeing the Doors live, I was like, "Oh, Jai's going to love this."
Yeah, like how incredible to think that he saw them live and he was like thoroughly mesmerized by them, you know, or by Jim Morrison, or like everything they were doing, you know?
And I
That's,
see some similarities now that it's pointed out and that I've seen a bit more Doors footage like on YouTube. I'm like seeing where Iggy
you
like
know, yeah. Sorry, continue. I
oh
interrupted.
yeah, I'm just seeing like that, even some of their songs you can hear kind of like the Doors inspiration. Like that
Well,
kind
I
of
feel like musically, not so much for me. Like I don't see it, but it's more about the attitude and like Jim Morrison's presence, because
Mhm.
obviously Iggy has his own insane, super cool dance. You know, the way he like moves on stage, and like Jim had his own thing going on. You know, so I
Mhm.
feel that. I mean, a lot of them, I suppose. Obviously, much later was Ian Curtis from Joy Division, you know?
Yeah.
Although I think that was slightly different because he actually had, um, what is it called? He had, like,
Oh,
epilepsy, I think.
epilepsy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's just really cool to see what they were all doing. The order as well, I thought was, like, really interesting because some things I didn't know, to be honest. Like, I mean,
I
I
learned about
didn't,
MC5 from this documentary that like kick out the jams, motherfucker. I was like,
yeah.
yeah, and I like went and listened to that album.
And I didn't think that the New York Dolls like had been that influential, but I guess
Oh,
they
yeah.
were, you know, because
Yeah.
I mean they're cool and I like them, but I guess I didn't realize how influential they were,
And
you
how
know.
amazing was it that they used fashion in that last
Oh
element where they
yeah,
used all red and they had like didn't Malcolm
yeah.
from like Vivian and Malcolm like
Well,
he made them all the red outfits? Didn't he
yes,
made them the red
but
outfits?
so that's the other misconception that people seem to think that Malcolm was sort of invented like the New York Dolls, and apparently, which I didn't know, he didn't. He was only with them at the end,
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, he was
and
like that
yeah,
last 2 weeks of the band or whatever. Yeah,
so
he
it's
was
kind
like,
of sad that people sort of giving him credit for that because
do
he
they?
was
I
just
didn't know
there
that.
with.
People give credit to Malcolm for founding the Dolls.
No, not fandom, but they definitely think that he had a lot to do with the band. Like he, maybe the look and everything. Because the thing is, right? If you look at the New York Dolls, I'm not saying obviously they have their own thing, but they do really at times like you kind of see Rolling Stones, like
Oh
a Rolling
yeah.
Stones vibe going on. You know, like
Hmm.
so I feel that. I mean, I guess it's the same thing, right? They were inspired, but that's very different from actually being the same. I don't know. I think Malcolm, maybe if anything, he maybe just said like, oh yeah, like let's look up these bands and like you could do a bit more like glam, like Mick Jagger or something. I don't know, but I mean, he obviously was at the end of
Yeah, the end of their era, I guess, as a
Yeah,
band, right?
yeah, exactly. And then he obviously had an idea of what was going on in New York, and then he went to London and thought, okay, let's do this with a bit more attitude, and like he formed like Sex Pistols, you know,
And
like
it's cool that like the Mick from the Clash was inspired by the Dolls. Like it was cool that a lot of bands in England were like inspired by them.
yeah,
Yeah, it was really
yeah,
cool.
it is. I mean, I suppose, and then you had the same, right? You had some bands in the US like really inspired by the British invasion of like artists, and it's cool that they say it. You know, I feel like
Hmm.
that's what I hate about now. Like people can't even give credit to other musicians. You know, when they're inspired by them, they you can see it. You can see so many people like doing very similar stuff to other artists, but they won't ever say it. And I feel like it's really cool to hear like these people actually recognizing like, oh yeah, we were really inspired by this band, you know, or we really
Yeah,
like this
no,
other
that's
band.
cool. And it's like
Um,
cool. There was no like competitive thing. It was like everyone was chill with each other and everybody had a different sound. So it was like no one was worried about making money and like, it was just about the music and about
yeah,
what you kind of stood for, which is cool.
yeah, no, it's really cool. It's just fascinating, really.
I feel like the whole time I was watching this, I was like, I was born way too late. I was like, I never get to experience anything. There's like, no, I was like, this is so cool. Like, why am I not here? Like, this just, I mean, everything. Like, at the end of, I was going to say, like, at the end of Glam, at the end of the Dolls, really, like, when they kind of imploded, I think they say, like, we kind of imploded. That's when like the Ramones kind of broke out and it was like this Manhattan like Lower East Side like playing really, and I love that. I believe like one of the guys from the Dolls like heard the Ramones like playing at the practice space, and as
Yes,
a Joey was like, yo, come listen to my band, and he was like, okay, whatever, and then he was like, get a job, like,
he was like, this
please,
is so
like,
bad.
yeah,
Great
this is
job.
so bad. Yeah, he's like, I had no idea how great they were, and he was just like, whatever, this is like.
Yeah, I think like consistently you hear a lot of them saying what is this, you know, it's just too fast, they can't even play, they're like a hot mess, but it was their niche, you know, they were doing their own thing. It was just like playing really fast, and that became like their sound sort of thing at the beginning, you know.
Yeah, no,
um
it's super cool. Like I really like that. I was like, oh my god. And then I love how they describe New York back then. They're like the Lower East Side was like dirty and it wasn't cleaned up. Like the one guy I think from the Dictators was talking about it and how like the Dictators, I think they came out in '74. And they had like the really cool. I think one of the guys from I think it's Legs McNeil, who's like one of the founders of Punk Magazine. He was talking about like the Dictators had like that awesome album cover with the guy with like the wrestling outfit, and inside they all had like black leather jackets sitting at a
oh
White
yeah,
Castle. And he was
yeah,
like, yeah, like those
yeah.
are like that's like what me and my friends do. Like we saw these guys and we were like, yeah. And then like Suicide came out of there and they were like super weird, experimental. Suicide's actually a really good band, and so is Television. They talk about Television.
Oh my god, I love television,
Yeah,
like
Sam, it's so good.
so good. But yeah, I mean, it's funny to think that so many bands were called punk, but they weren't really like
No,
it clearly. I mean, I didn't know that either. That a lot of them weren't happy with the fact that they sort of put them in that category because they wouldn't even call their sound punk. I think it was more like the media sort of created that because it's lazy, you know. It's like what they do now. They just kind of want to put you in a box, and they all sounded completely different. But they were like, okay, this is punk, you know.
they did the same thing with grunge too, which I mean, yeah, I hate the word but love the word because I like it's a way to identify what I like or the genre, but it's the same thing, yeah, with grunge too. I feel like the media just does that. Like you guys all sound the same, you guys all look the same. We think you sound the same, we're just gonna put you in this box.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and I think they said at one point, like Debbie Harry from Blondie, like people heard she was punk, and like radio stations thought she was gonna have a knife. Like they thought that like she was violent. They thought that if you were punk, you were like scary and stuff like
Well,
that.
yeah, because that word had a really bad reputation. You
Hmm.
know, like I love there is a line in there when this guy talks about I can't remember who it was, but he says like the first time I heard punk was basically like the meaning was basically get fucked in the bum. and he was in jail,
prison.
that's what you would say, like, in prison, right? So then when people, I think it was because of the magazine, right, that they created, they call it punk. And so then the media started calling all these artists like punk music. And it's just funny to think that they weren't, a lot of them, you would never like consider them punk. Like Joy Division wasn't punk, for example. You know,
they're like what,
Suicide.
Are they like
Suicide wasn't? Yeah, Suicide wasn't either, and they were quite. I don't know. They were quite, I suppose,
like experimental, and definitely
they were before Joy Division, and so they had already that whole synth going on. You know, the synth thing going on, and they were, if anything, probably too early for their time, because people were like, this is really weird, you know?
Yeah. They started in 1970, Suicide.
Yeah, in the 70s, yeah.
So that's crazy.
I suppose, so MC5 came out in 64. Then I suppose they...
Velvet Underground?
Velvet Underground was 60... Sorry... Yeah, it was in the 60s.
60s, right? 64. Wow.
64, yeah, 64. So I guess, even though it's quite different what MC5 was doing, but it's cool to think, I mean, you know this, but the fact that Andy Warhol was a true, like, visionary, because he... and I have an issue with people misusing that word, because, you know...
Because,
we met
like,
people who say they're visionaries, and
I get that people, I get that people want to be, like, self-affirming. Like, I'm all for saying, like, you know, you're a boss, you're a fucking, you know, whatever. Like, I'm all for self-affirmation, but, like, visionary just is another level. I mean,
it's another level, to the point that I can only think of two visionaries, and I'm struggling to come up with more
in our lifetime.
And I'm thinking, well, Andy Warhol and Steve Jobs, and I can't think of, there's a lot of talented people, and there has been a lot of incredibly talented people. Visionary is someone who, like, genuinely has that vision, that can see how things are gonna go, like the direction things will go, and so they're ahead of everyone else, you know?
And I think, I mean, I Andy Warhol, yes, but I don't count him, obviously, because he's not in our lifetime. Like, yes, I do count him as a visionary, but as much as not all visionaries are good, like, Mark Zuckerberg's a visionary. He literally changed how...
I know, but I hate him, so...
Well, I know you don't like him, but not all visionaries can be good, but he definitely changed, like, the whole landscape, and saw into the future of how people are going to, like, connect, and now look what happened. You know, now we have social media, which is essentially, like, part of our lives all the time. Like, you can never turn it off. It's just really crazy.
Well, yeah, but sadly, I feel like he's not gonna go down in history as a visionary.
No,
if anything,
no, he won't.
He will go down in history as a villain, you know? Like,
he is like a Bond villain. He is a bit like
totally.
a Bond villain. Make sure to like us on Facebook. Or Instagram. Oh, yeah, and like and subscribe. Fucking
hell. Yeah. Like and subscribe, you know.
I'm just gonna write it in the actual show notes, and just be like, yo... Just go listen to it. Apparently today I found out on the podcast front news, wee you, like podcast front news, Joe Rogan is now signing to Spotify exclusively. And Rogan is probably, like, one of the biggest podcasts, like, in the whole universe. So that's massive. Yeah, I think by the end of the year he's only going to be on Spotify, which is nuts. I don't think they've ever gotten anyone that big. Like,
no, they haven't. Maybe that's why they've done it, because they don't have, like, great podcasts on there.
No, and no one. I mean, a lot of people. I see most people. Some people do listen to the show on Spotify, which is great. The bulk of it is on Apple, but, like, I think what's kind of weird about Spotify too is that some countries, I think, don't have Spotify. Or it's not as developed as it is in probably Europe and, like, North America. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because I was reading today, I think I was reading on Twitter when, like, Rogan announced it, and some people in the comments were like, they don't have Spotify in my country, like, this is a shame. Like, I mean, I hope that I'll be able to, like, it's still gonna be free, like, he said that, like, it's not gonna, like, you know, be behind a paywall or anything, but I hope that it's, I don't know, distributed on, like, Google, like, something, so everyone can hear it, you know? Because it's kind of weird that some countries don't have Spotify.
But, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, but they have Apple. I'm assuming they have Apple, but they don't have Spotify, so...
Yeah, well, I think everyone has Apple, but... But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just
anyway,
yeah, back to it. And
the
then
visionary
television,
and
Visionaries, Richard Hell,
well,
another visionary.
yes, another one. But I just think it's insane that in 64, 65, Andy Warhol already had that vision to be like, okay, these guys they need something more appealing. Like, let's get a really beautiful woman as a front girl sort of thing. And like, they got Nico, and then they had all these incredible visuals, and it was all like, kind of music and like
And
art
he had like
combined, and
the
and
album
then they
with the
had
banana painting was like
yeah, well,
67.
yeah, because he thought, okay, I can bring that element to the band, like art, right? And then obviously they had the factory, and they were all kind of. When you think of Andy, you don't think just Andy Warhol, you think of Velvet Underground, and vice versa,
And
right?
Edie
Like
Sedgwick and like a whole bunch of people that were like in his realm.
it's like that whole scene, and
Yeah.
like it's just so interesting. Like it's just so cool.
Basquiat. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of people.
Um. But yeah, sorry, Richard Hill. Like, yeah.
Isn't that crazy how he would wear the safety pins and Malcolm apparently brought that back?
Yeah, he took that
Isn't
and
that
to
nuts?
England,
That's
and
such a big. It's so is it assumed, because I don't know that much about this, and maybe you do, but the is mostly, if you identify like punk fashion in England, is it mostly like that Sex Pistols genre?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
what I
yeah,
what I love about I love that there are two different takes on punk, like as a fashion standpoint, because I personally love the fashion of the New York scene, which was kind of like nothing. It kind of like wasn't a look. It was like it was, but it wasn't. And like I feel like the one in the UK, obviously I'm not like a crazy like outlandish like dresser when it comes to fashion, but I appreciate it. But obviously I would dress more like the New York style. But I love the style of the UK punk too, because it's so visual and it's such a look. Like it's
yeah.
a definite look. It's like spikes, it's plaid, it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's the safety pins, it's the
It's
leather, it's the
crazy hair,
spikes.
it's
Yeah.
Mohicans, and yeah. I mean, I think that's true to be honest. Like now and back then, I feel like the UK is always. I mean, it's part of like the culture, right? Being eccentric and like taking something and transforming it into something else, like bolder kind of thing. Even now you see it still with fashion. Like New York fashion is so different from like London, like British style. And so I think Malcolm obviously went back to the UK. He had a store with Vivienne Westwood. She was not like, she didn't study fashion. She was like self-taught, and I think at first it was a lot of like customized stuff. Like
So
they
cool.
were cutting t-shirts and like putting all the safety pins and then making stuff that was like really out there. And obviously she was wearing like crazy makeup and hair and stuff. And so I feel that it's true what they say. Someone there, whose interview, I can't remember her name. I think she was from, not Siouxsie Sioux, but like, there was another.
Chrissy Hind.
I think so.
Is it
I
the
think
girl
she
from The
was the one.
Pretenders?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
from the
Chrissy Hind,
Pretenders.
yeah.
She says that she doesn't think punk would have been the same without
Yeah.
Vivian and Malcolm. It's totally right, because
Yeah.
they were obviously really well known, and a lot of people used to hang out in their shop. And so it's sad in a way at the same time that later on, when they said like punk became so well known around the country, and like the music and everything, it just became mainstream. It's like that happens sometimes.
Yeah, it like happens
And
all the
so
time.
because so many people knew what it was and was following it, then the style became that sort of cliche, like everyone's wearing Mohican and like t-shirts that are ripped
And
with
the
like,
bands never did, which is so
but the
crazy.
bands didn't. Yeah,
Yeah, they
so
were
it's
like
kind of
it
like,
was like the fans wore that, but like a lot of the bands didn't wear anything like that.
I think it was more like it was a trend. It became a trend, but sadly, it was associated with punk, and so they thought, "Oh, that's what punk is," But it
Yeah, that's
wasn't.
true.
It wasn't just that. I mean, I guess you can't really help that. Like the moment that something becomes popular, then and blows out, like then it become mainstream. You know, with anything that's good, it just happens. You know, I think.
Yeah, at least the only upside, the downside to it obviously is that people, like record companies, are profiting off of like kind of creating this. But the upside is that it does, you know, get your music to reach a lot more people. You know,
Yeah.
that whether they like it or whether they are like posers and only liking what's popular on the radio, like back then anyway, not now, but like you could, you know, like what you want to do, I would assume if you want to do music professionally, like you want everyone to hear what you have to say. Otherwise,
Yeah.
like, why are you doing it? You know, like, you
Yeah.
might as well just do
Exactly.
it, whatever. If you go out and get a record deal, like, you clearly, that's your vibe. You want to do that. So the more people that hear it, you know, and maybe even open their eyes to another genre. Like, that's the one thing that I loved about Nirvana was that, like, finding out about Nirvana really young and then kind of finding out, like, what they liked, I was turned on to a whole other set of bands that I probably wouldn't have known if Nirvana wasn't so fucking massive. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
so it's like it all kind of mixes, you know, goes together, which I think in the end, when they were talking about Nirvana, the guy's like, well, you know, they weren't like so big because they were the best band in the world. Like they just had this fan base that was like building, you know, that just kind of like wanted this band that was what they wanted and different and took all these different lessons. So it was kind of crazy. But yeah, I do
Yeah,
like
and
when
also the record, sort of the music industry, like the record industry changed too because it was more accessible, right? And they were distributing more. So I guess it was kind of like doing something at the right time and being at the right place, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, literally. Which is super cool. I have like, my notes are so funny. I have going to the UK. I took notes for this chronologically, and I have like going to the UK. Social problems in the UK influence music, which it does. And I think the Clash talk was more of like the political, like when they bring in the Clash, it's really interesting because it's more of like the political type side of like UK, more than Sex Pistols, who I've never been like a massive fan of. I do like the Sex Pistols, like, but I've never been like, I would like the Clash more if I had to choose. If you give me one
Well,
or the other.
I think you can't. I feel like you can't really compare them because the Clash was making music for way longer. You know, like
Well,
the
that's
Sex
true.
Pistols
Yeah,
were
that's true. Yeah,
was
they had
only
like an
around.
album, like
They
an
were
album,
around for
right?
like 3 years, I think. They were only together for 3 or 2 years,
That's right. Yeah, that's true.
and so also, you know, who knows what would have happened, but because Sid Vicious like killed himself or whatever,
Did they
died.
kick him out of the band before he died, or was he with Nancy in New York and he like they were still playing and he was like kicked out, or had they just broken up?
I don't actually know. I
Yeah, I
don't know.
wonder.
Yeah, it'll be cool to know. I'm sure you can find that
Yeah, yeah.
online.
They have a
But the
movie.
point is that even if, let's say, like, even if he hadn't died, I don't think he would have even like, he would eventually have quit because when everyone was doing heroin and
Oh,
everything,
that's
it's just
true. Yeah.
you can't produce anything. That's why they say like punk didn't last. Like sort of those bands that we know as punk and that movement didn't last that long because once the heroin came in, you know, the scene, then that's when things went down the hill, right? And like you can't really make music. You're just fucked. You
And
know?
they
It's
kind of
kind of
That's true. And they kind of, Siouxsie from Siouxsie and the Banshees kind of attributed, like, because there was, like, was it Johnny and the Heartbreakers? I think came over to England and that's Nancy Spungen was with them and they were doing heroin. And they
Yeah,
kind of,
who-
like everyone was doing speed, I think, at that time, like, in this scene. And, like, she was doing heroin and, like, they were like, yeah, and they brought kind of, like, smack over. And once,
yeah,
like,
but they
that
sort of
happened with
they
Sid.
sort of blame her, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, they
Because
kind
she
of
was
blamed
like,
her for it, yeah. She did,
because apparently
Sushi.
she was on it way before, like she, you know, she was like heavily into it, and so then when she met Sid, then she
Like
got
a
him
time bomb.
hooked, and yeah,
Essentially.
but yeah, like it's just really insane. Like I love the Clash. I mean, everyone, to be honest, like if
Yeah,
you
they
like
are
the
pretty
Clash,
cool.
you like
I like the
Sex
Buzzcocks.
Pistols,
I love
Buzzcocks, yeah.
I love that they went into like the Buzzcocks and that was pretty cool. Oh, another side note before we get back into England, Mary Harron was there talking about like the inception of Punk magazine. Mary Harron is a photographer, but she became a film director and directed American Psycho. So she is
No way!
fucking
Really?
badass. Yeah,
What?
she's a little further back when they talk about Richard Hell. It's like in that section, and she was like, I think Legs McNeil, who did Punk, was like saying that they went to Lou Reed after a gig and were like, we want to interview you and we'll put you on the cover, and he was like, oh,
yeah.
wow, your circulation must be great.
Oh yeah, that's so funny.
And she was there. She was like there, and I think she's a photographer, and she became a film director, and she did also the movie called I Shot Andy Warhol, or like Who Shot Andy Warhol, something like that, because Andy Warhol was obviously shot in like the 60s or 70s by Valerie Solanas, but
70s.
yeah, 70s, and yeah,
No.
so she's dope.
That's right, yeah. Okay,
She's
I didn't
dope,
know that
American
she
Psycho.
made American Psycho.
Yeah.
That's insane.
She did. And apparently, another side note that I just recently read, apparently the studio pushed for Leonardo DiCaprio to do that role. I thought he never got it. They pushed for him to do it, and she was like, no, I want Christian Bale. And the studio took the film away from her for a time. And then they couldn't really get anyone to make it with like Leo. And then they like gave it back to her. And then she was like, I want Christian Bale. And they didn't tell him to like buff up. He just did that because he thought like this is what this character would be like. And I was like, and now we know Christian Bale like literally transforms himself like,
well, yeah,
crazy. So he was doing that, I guess, from the start. Like, but then if we never had that, could you imagine if we never had American Psycho with Christian Bale? Like,
it just wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, that broke him. That was like literally like the movie that everyone was like, who is this guy?
It's like such an iconic film.
So good.
So
we might have to do a bonus,
so
even though that came out in 2000. I'm sure they filmed it in 99. So we should just include it in an episode because I love that movie so much. Oh yeah, and I have also that there were 100 people that turned up to that, like, was it 100 Club? And it was like Joy Division, Morrissey, The Damned, Siouxsie, like all those people were there.
Probably more people than 100, but yeah, it was the
100 Club or something.
It was 100 Club, and they had this festival. And what year was it? I think it was 74. In 74, maybe. I think they had a festival. Yeah, that's, there's so many like fascinating places like that in the UK, just because it's like an old, like, it's like an, like an old country. And so you have things running for like years. Like that club was actually open in the 40s. That was like a music venue in the 40s. It was like, I don't think it was like just jazz, but it was definitely associated with like kind of like jazz gigs and different kind of music. And then in the 70s, like in 74, they decided to do that punk festival, and I guess they had more alternative acts, but I mean, even now to this day, it's still like one of those places that has like really insane acts, and it's just really like London, it's part of London music scene, I suppose. Like it's been influential. And the Roxy. Like,
is there a plaque there, or what's there now? Do you know?
What do you mean?
Like where the building is now? Is it still there? Do you know? Like, do you know where the 100 Club or the Roxy is? Or is
it's the 100 Club
is
is
still
in
open?
Oxford Circus. I'm pretty sure it's still open. I know there was a club they closed, but I think it was Astoria. I don't think it was a 100 Club. Maybe, can you look it up?
Yeah, let me see if it's the same.
I'm pretty sure that's not what they closed. They did close. I remember it was like there was this crazy, like, people were so upset that they were closing like a lot of iconic music venues in London. Just
is it 100 Oxford Street?
Yeah, it's 100. It's in Oxford Street.
Okay, so yeah, I think it just is temporarily closed right now.
Yeah, no, it has to be, because I don't remember that. I don't think they would allow them to close.
Yeah, it's like a landmark at this point.
There was another one that they closed where people were really upset. I think it's called Astoria, the Astoria. But yeah, that happened like maybe like 9 years ago, when they started closing these music venues, and
it's crazy.
I know, just because of the areas, because Oxford Street is like one of the busiest sort of streets,
It's like Times Square. I was there once.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So
I was like, oh my god, yeah, it was just like
they see it as like they're losing money because they could like build something else.
Oh yeah, like shops
offices
or
condos
or something. Oh, that's crazy. And then I love how the
Um,
UK punk mag was called Sniff and Glue. Like
oh
that's the
yeah,
one
that's
that they
really
came
funny.
up with. Like yeah, and then obviously the Sex Pistols interviews are like my favorite when they went on
Oh
Grundy.
my god, that was so funny. You
It's like
fucking twat.
I know it's the best. I was like, okay, I love that they're just like fuck this. Like this is crazy. This is so cool. And then they go into like the Clash, and we get that reggae vibe. We get the Slits, who are dope. And then you hear about Don, the
So cool, the
producer or the
slits.
director
Yeah.
of the movie, and they're like, yeah, everyone hung out in his room. Like he always had all the reggae records, and he was a DJ, and like that was so cool. And I was like, damn. I was like, that's so crazy that this guy directed it. And then I like how they go. I love that Sex Pistols show in Texas where there were all those like
What?
rednecks
Oh my
there, and
god.
then they
And
said that
then
like they were like throwing shit at them, and Sid Vicious like
he
cut
just
his.
kept playing.
Yeah, they
He
just
had
kept
like he was
playing. It was
covered in
just
blood and
crazy.
he just
Yeah, I was
like
like, oh my
continued to
god.
play. That's like punk attitude. That is punk,
Yeah,
you
that
know?
is. Yeah, totally.
I think it's quite cool like how you define or like what people think punk is, you know? Like everyone pretty much consistently said like it was just an attitude. It was like being against the establishment, you know, like a way to express yourself with no boundaries and like not give a fuck about what other one like what anyone thought about you and like just do your thing. It's like and it's so crazy that they go back to like the 50s, right? They say that what he was doing was punk. What's his name? Richard? No, not
Oh,
Richard.
Jerry Lee Lewis, Chuck Berry.
Chuck Berry, that's it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They were like, that was punk, you
Doing
know,
something different. Yeah, just doing
doing
something
something
so
different.
weird and
Yeah,
different.
it's
It's super cool. And I love my fave Henry Rollins is sprinkled throughout this
oh my god,
documentary.
he's amazing. His commentary is so good.
He's
I
like
feel
the
like it
best.
was
He can talk about anything.
he's like a I don't know, like a sort of he's just so full of knowledge, like
So full of
music wise, you
knowledge.
know. Like I mean, he it's interesting that to hear him say that in 1980, that's when he thinks music got interesting. It's like it's he says that, and I'm like, really? I mean, music was really great before, but I guess for him, it was like, no, that's when you started getting like really
Well, yeah.
interesting acts. Like it was like sort of end of punk, and then people that had been sort of going to these gigs and stuff, they created something different. Like it was more like it went all different directions, I suppose. And then you
Yeah.
had like hardcore, like punk, you know,
And
like
then it all was kind of separated by region. Like it became very regional.
yeah,
There's another really good film called American Hardcore, which I own that one as well. But like, it's another really good one, all about the American hardcore scene and like how it differed within regions and like Chicago and L.A. and D.C. and Florida and like Pacific North. It's really cool. Like you hear all their different sounds and everything. So yeah, it
yeah.
is
I mean,
really
it makes
cool.
sense. It makes sense, obviously, that people play different sort of music in like you know the east versus west, but it's funny how someone said oh yeah like the punk or like sort of music you had in the east coast was so different from like the
So
west
different.
coast
Yeah.
because you would have never had this band, what are they called, they're like hardcore,
Oh,
and
Agnostic
they were
Front.
from yeah, and they were like they could have never come out from LA, you
Yeah.
know,
I
like
love Henry Rollins just being. I love that Henry just literally doubles down on everything that he says. He's not very like blase about his opinions. He's very like, no, this is how it is. Like, this is exactly what it is. Like, he's so passionate about it.
yeah, like he's like oh you have like sunny weather, beautiful chicks,
Mm-hmm.
oranges, and then you
Yeah.
have like
Then he's like, then you have the East Coast. People live on top of each other. They talk really fast. Fuck
like
you means
me.
fuck you, not fuck you.
No.
Let's do lunch next week.
Yeah, that's really funny.
I was
It's
like,
true, you know.
yeah,
He's
it's
like
true.
people here are more like in your face, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so true.
I
But
love how they get into like I love the Dead Kennedys too. They're another one of my favorite bands. Or not like favorite, but like they're up there. And I love how they talk about like how in New York like punk got merged with hip hop and like the Beastie Boys. And like
oh
Public
yeah,
Enemy, like they kind of
it's like
embraced that whole genre of bending. Like it's cool. It was just cool, you know?
yeah. I think that's like the beauty of it that someone will take some element from the music and then do something super different. You know, like I I feel like the whole hip hop scene, I missed that train because for whatever reason, I just wasn't around it. I don't know. I just didn't. It's not something I grew up with, you know. Like I definitely could have. I don't know. It's just not my thing. I don't think. I mean, I definitely like some old hip hop, but I don't. I never really follow or care for it. I appreciate like the old stuff is good, not like versus like now, you know,
Yeah, I
like the
feel
stuff that's made
like
now. But
I didn't really think about it, I guess, until you mentioned it, but like hip hop is a huge part of America in the 80s and 90s.
I know,
Like,
no, I know. I've
because
watched so many documentaries
yeah, I
about
was gonna
it.
say, like, every time, like, I obviously have been, like, majoritarily, like, you know, like, I guess majoritively or whatever that word would be, but, like, I basically like rock and elements of rock, but when I was really young, like, I loved, like, TLC, fucking, like, Boys to Men, like, all these, like, hip-hop, R&B acts that were just massive, like, Mary J. Blige, like, definitely listened to Biggie, like, it was everywhere, Tupac, like, it was just out, you know, Aaliyah, another huge one. Like, we just had, like, tons. It was everywhere. It became, I think, mainstream in probably like, mid-90s
Yeah.
when grunge kind of ended. And, yeah, alternative rock was still, like, a big thing, though. Like, rock definitely still was, like, on top until, like, I guess, when did rock kind of fall off? Like, early
I think
2000s?
early 2000s
Is
because
that,
that's
like,
all the best stuff came out
after the
like late
Strokes?
90s and then Strokes
The
and then
indie boom, like
indie boom
Interpol, yeah,
was
yeah,
like
yeah,
2000, early 2000s, I
yeah, and
guess.
then
But
after that, it like switched to hip hop. Like in like '08, it was like, doop, like we're flipping a switch, and it's like straight hip hop now and
well,
pop, I
maybe
guess.
here because I mean
Oh yeah, here, yeah, popular
it's
music.
definitely big. It's big in the UK, but you do have like dance and sort of electronic music that's still up there. You know, it's not like
Yeah,
the
that didn't
main.
really go away.
I feel like here is like yeah, everyone loves hip hop. Like
EDM was really big a few
uh,
years ago, and now I feel like hip hop's back, like dominating.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I definitely think. I know people who like hip hop in the UK. A lot of my friends do, but for some reason, I just never really got into it. Like, it just didn't appeal, you know?
I like kind of like
Yeah.
the grime of the UK. I
Oh,
like
yeah.
Skepta. I like Dizzy Rascal. I saw the streets and Dizzy Rascal here. It was like such an awesome
This
show because
is,
it
yeah.
wasn't that packed at all, but it was a dope show.
This is what I mean. Like, it's so interesting when people go different directions. Like, I can see how, like, people that were, you know, like the whole, like, punk reggae and then went into hip hop and then started, like, doing a fusion or whatever, right? And then same, like some people went from that underground punk into like more into hardcore, right? So
Hmm.
like more intense. But then I don't know. I think like for me it was more like rock always, punk, and then from there it's kind of I went more the direction of like New Order, you know, like they went more
Oh
like
yeah,
electronic
like new wave.
and then new wave, you know. So
Yeah,
it's yeah, it's just interesting to see all the directions that music kind of went.
it is
Um,
cool, and I like how they talk about Minor Threat, which is obviously from DC and like the straight edge scene. There's another film called Salad Days, another really good documentary on like the whole DC scene. There are a lot.
I've seen that. I've seen that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they touch on LA, which also has a really influential punk scene. They talk about the Mask, which is a really important venue in LA. There's one called The Smell, which I'm not sure if that's still open. They were trying to save it a while ago. And then they obviously talking about like Dead Kennedys and that whole West Coast vibe, which is really cool. But like DC's got Bad Brains, which are so amazing that they're just an all black, ridiculously amazing,
Yeah, no, that
influential
is really
hardcore punk band.
cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Like I feel like I appreciate it, you know, whether like I'm into it or not. I feel I still kind of appreciate that they're really talented and they were doing like their own thing.
Yeah.
It's just really cool because I before I moved here, I didn't know about any of those bands. It like didn't know Bad Brains, didn't know Black Flag
Oh,
or
you didn't
any
know
of
Black
them.
Flag?
I don't think so. Maybe I think I heard of them, but I didn't really know. Like I don't think it's too much for me. I think
Could
that.
you imagine Black Flag literally got like the magic touch when they got like this East Coast singer, which is what they talk about when they got Henry that joined their band
Yeah,
because they're very LA, but he totally brought that like rugged, like it's a pretty amazing fusion of like
He
West
was
Coast
like
hardcore.
one crazy dude.
I wrote Henry in short shorts! Exclamation point.
And long hair.
Henry
Long
can
hair.
get it. Henry can get it in short shorts. Henry could get it today. So I mean,
Yeah, no, he's
I love
cute.
Henry Rollins. I just love him so much. And then I love how like Thurston Moore is kind of like sprinkled in every now and again.
Oh yeah,
We
there's
did
a
do
lot
a
of
Thurston
in it.
Moore on the Sonic Youth documentary episode where he literally is just the entire thing. But yeah, it's kind of funny that I used to have his book No Wave New York Underground 76 to 80. I think in LA I had to leave it behind, but I did have that book. It's cool. It's all the photos from the underground scene, like kind of like what happened. Because you know how he's like, oh, you know, people always say nothing happened and then Nirvana came around, and it's all about like that time period. And there's another book that I just bought by Michael Azerrad, who's an amazing author. He's the one, I think, who did the only authorized Nirvana biography called Come As You Are, which is really good. He wrote another book about indie rock and alternative rock from like 81 to like early 90s that I just bought on Amazon. So I can't wait to read that. It's all about like that kind of lost like post-punk era where a lot of those bands were coming out that were, you know, like super different. But I love how they introduced Nirvana. I mean, we could talk about Nirvana like all day, all night, but I just
Yeah,
I like how they introduced
I
it.
mean, I think it was really cool to hear that. Like, I mean, he really just said it. He nailed it. You know, like there's this guy who is talking about what a lot of like white teenagers were going through, totally depressed, talking about how they were feeling, sort of like representing them in a way.
Yeah,
You
like
know, it's
looks.
like
Yeah, looks like them.
yeah, it looks like them is going through the same, and people just really related. So I can see it. Like it totally makes sense. And also music had changed back then, like with the record labels and all of that. So it was like he just did it at the right time, you know. Like I mean, obviously the music was great too, but
But like that
I
one
mean,
guy says, I think it's like Glenn Branca. He was like, they didn't get so big because they were so great, which they were, but like that
they
whole
had all these other
audience,
things.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was like building, and obviously it helped spawn tons of other bands from that genre. You know, like it wasn't just one. Like, you know, tons came with it after it. Labels, Sub Pop was, you know, like blew up. So, you know, lots of things happened in and around that.
yeah, and also like Harry said that like he was like at that time like record labels already were like taking an interest in music that they would have not like 10 years before that, you know. So they were like, you know, a lot of the opportunities that like punk music didn't have, grunge did, because there was like MTV and like record labels were like Virgin, all these like big record labels were like, oh yeah, we wanna like be associated with like new and young and like what are the kids into, you know. It's like grunge, post punk or whatever. So yeah, it's just everything basically that came together for them, I suppose.
That's super cool. And I had to mute my microphone because it's trash day and people are taking the trash out. And you can hear the
Oh,
bins like roll out. And I was just like, oh crap, how am I going to turn this off? So I had to like mute my mic so I could hear you. But otherwise you would hear like trash bins like rolling out to the alley.
yeah,
And like over.
I hear you, but you definitely got a bit quieter, like the volume or something. I don't know.
Oh, did I? Am I louder
It's
again?
you're yeah, it's better now.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so then I just love how Henry Rollins describes everything. And then I love how they go into like punk after that became like Green Day, like this band called Rancid, like Blink-182, like, you know, it still kind of evolved into like just a totally different sound, and it just went.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
God,
since
Limp
we're
Bizkit, God help us.
oh my god, please, can I just say something? Now I've been waiting
Oh yeah.
time to just say it because we're there now. I fucking hate Limp Bizkit. Hate it. Hate. It's like an understatement. It's so crap. Whenever people ask who's out there, like some of the acts that you really don't like that were not, you know, they're not
Yeah,
right
they're
according
just
to
not
you.
your
I'm like,
vibe at all.
I can only think of Limp Bizkit. They're truly
Really?
like a terrible band. Yes.
I almost died at a Limp Bizkit mosh pit. It
Nothing
was
appealing. Oh god,
pretty
no.
fucking awful. It was at a festival. I was not at a Limp Bizkit show. I was stuck up there. it was, yeah. It's just that whole aggressive male energy that they bring, that whole vibe, like Korn, like, you know how Henry Rollins
Yeah.
perfectly describes it. Like, if I was a 17-year-old boy, this would be my favorite band. Like, I want to break shit. I want to just, like, and he just, like, makes fun of the whole, like, breakdowns in their music and how they sing. I do have the Korn album. I do have 3 Limp Bizkit albums. I do enjoy Limp Bizkit, I have to say. I like their first album.
No.
Yeah, I've got an eclectic taste. The only band that I don't really like a lot is Slipknot. That's a band, and
None of them.
Insane Clown
None
Posse.
of
I
the
do like Korn.
fans.
I have like 2 Korn albums. Yeah, I mean, I liked a fair amount of that like new metal when it was out. I mean, it was on the radio. I was kind of like
It was on MTV. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah, I was not. I don't want to say a fan, but I like definitely listened to it. I'm not even gonna front. I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, I listened to Limp Bizkit. I have not in about 20 years though. Like it's been a really long time. I don't think I've listened to Limp Bizkit in a while, but yeah, it is pretty embarrassing and terrible. And yeah, then it kind of talks about like how punk in the long run in the end really ushered in this DIY scene, like how they talk about how the internet's super punk, just creating your own everything. And I guess that's kind of a big reason why I started Fashion Grunge, because I was like, man, everything's lame. I want to do my own shit. Now I'm doing my own shit.
And you came out first, and now there's like other people who
Yeah.
tried to do something similar to
I
you.
guess.
And
Yeah,
they call themselves whatever it is. Like, what is it? Is it called rugged fashion or like did fashion gone rogue or whatever?
Oh yeah.
So,
Are they? Did they post like other people's editorials, right? Like just magazines, like other magazines.
I don't know, but whatever I don't know what the thing is, but I've seen what they're about, and I don't like it. But it's funny that they call themselves grunge, but it's not really.
Yeah, no.
You know?
There's only one. There's
Yeah.
only one. So yeah, this is super
talking
great.
about.
I'm excited that we got to review it. Jai, what are your like last minute thoughts on it? Do you have anything else to add?
Well, let me see. I mean, I don't know. I think it's interesting that at the end they all sort of talk about how they isn't kind of like back then punk was about like being against obviously like the government and standing up for what they believed, and there was like all these like social and political chaos and stuff. But now that people basically whatever is happening in the political landscape isn't being expressed through music.
No, and this
now,
came out
like
when
back then,
George Bush was in. That's when this documentary came out. So it was like 2005.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what they're talking about. This is before Obama came in. So there was like a
But it's the same
war.
now.
Yeah, I was going
It's
to say, it's
now,
exactly the same,
you know?
if not worse.
It's like 15 years later after they've done this documentary, and like they're so right, and it made me think about it. Like, I guess they said like maybe film and like visual arts, maybe people are expressing, their views on things, or like rebelling against what's happening like government wise, throughout that. Like a lot of film for sure, and art, but
and just like what we were saying
music,
earlier. Now, oh yeah, go on.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say now we have Netflix, like that's its own channel. Like all these things kind of came out on their own and kind of created like a new, like not lots of people are now getting their shows on Netflix or like HBO. YouTube is super punk. Like everybody's doing their own shit. Everybody's like DIY.
Yeah, no, that is true. But
in the long run, I mean, there's bad things when things get commercial. Obviously, it's commercial now, but not when it first came out.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder. Maybe we just don't know about it, but there must be like a lot of people out there still making music that it's quite not controversial, but I mean,
there is.
maybe
It's just not like mainstream doesn't really
it's just not
exist
a
anymore.
mainstream.
Like it does,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It's mainstream is like I guess like what's big on Spotify and YouTube, but everyone has their own niche now because it's just so easy to like carve out listening to exactly what you want, listening to podcasts, like being really centric and knowing exactly what you want to listen to, and you don't have to listen to like a broad range like a radio and just kind of like wait to hear what you want. You can just it's on demand now, even TV. You know, it's like you don't have to
Yeah.
wait to watch the show that you like to watch. You can watch whatever you want right now. So it's really customized. Like the world's very customized, you know? That's how it kind of seems now. It's really weird. But I hope
Yeah,
that
it
we'll eventually
is.
get back to another dope music revolution because I kind of want rock to come back.
I know, me too, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, at least
Oh,
in
it was
America.
funny
I
to
know it
say.
exists other places. I know it's really big in
We
Latin
totally,
America.
we totally forgot to mention this, but I thought it was really funny when they said, yeah, punk, like what was, what the Stooges were doing and everything was basically saying like fuck up to the hippies. Everyone
I
wanted to just
know.
like, go away hippies, and like, and it's funny because at the same time, all that sort of music that started in the 60s, that was also rebellious,
Yeah, that was
So it's not
countercultural
like
too.
it was. They were people that were protesting about the Vietnam War and like basically doing lots of drugs and like creating art and just basically just protesting, which is pretty punk, to be like
Yeah,
I'm gonna go out there and like
change
um
it.
yeah. But it's funny that they were like, oh yeah, we just wanted to get rid of the hippies. I'm like, the hippies weren't that bad.
And the hippies also weren't commercial either. They weren't like
No, they
corporate.
weren't.
So, yeah, it is kind of strange. I mean, they
Yeah.
both had the same kind of like attitude with rebellion, but I feel like punk was just way more like in your face, I guess. I think hippies, I kind of more like, it seemed like hippies more like retreated and kind of created their own worlds as opposed to punk kind of like being in your face and yelling about like, this is what we think is wrong. And, like, but I think hippies, it seemed more like hippies kind of like fuck your world, we're gonna move and create our own. Like you still do your shit over there, but like we don't want any of that. We're gonna come over here and create our own. And then like
Yeah.
kind of communes form, cults, all that kind of weird shit. Not that it was all bad, but but that's what I'm thinking of. Like they're not trying to change current society. They're trying to like they voice their opinion. They know it's not really changing, so they kind of like move and create their own world, where they don't have to deal with your world. Like your
Yeah.
violent world. But this one, it seems like punk was very like, fuck you, we're gonna get in your face, we're gonna make you feel uncomfortable. Because like you need to know this.
Exactly.
Like you need to hear this. So you need to hear what everyone has to say and not just censor everything. Pretty much. But
Do you know much about Vivian Westwood and oh my god,
Malcolm?
Malcolm's son? Did you know much about him?
No.
Okay, so I mean, why would you, right? But I thought that maybe you would have heard. So like, I can't remember exactly when this was, but like a few years ago. Okay, so basically they had a son. They never got married.
I was gonna say, were they married?
No, they didn't. But they had a son, and he's the founder of this really amazing store, like a brand called Asian Provocateur. Do you know it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's the founder. He started that.
Oh, no way.
But there was this crazy, obviously, being son of Malcolm and Vivian, literally there's no one else more punk, as in like female, in the UK than Vivian. And so he's into the whole scene too. But a few years ago, he burned £5 million of punk and like Sex Pistols memorabilia.
What?
Did you know about it?
I don't think
he
so.
burned it. He burned it on the Thames River, like on a boat.
Why?
Yeah.
Did he say why?
It was kind of like a protest. I think it was like the punk's 40th anniversary.
Oh.
And like he did it as a protest because he felt that punk had become this sort of marketing tool, like very mainstream, and like he just became like a brand like McDonald's. I remember hearing that. Like,
oh, okay.
He just became it was like a way of saying, no, this is like the most punk thing you can do, to burn all these memorabilia, which it was very controversial because a lot of people who were into the scene were like, yeah, but it could have, like,
That's
we could have done so much with that material. It's memorabilia that you can't get back. But other people were like, no, that's cool because it's punk. It's just not, basically him not allowing for
people to make money off of like
exactly,
yeah, in like a museum or like an exhibit.
Yeah, exactly. Because the people were like, oh no, he could have opened a museum or have like an exhibition. They're like, no, because the whole point is to keep it kind of, I mean, obviously you can't really sort of turn it underground because, you know, everyone knows.
Yeah, everyone
what
knows about
punk
it now.
is. And-
Yeah.
But he didn't want to make it, you know, like accessible to a lot of. And it's true, he's right. Like that generation, whenever this happened, it was like 5 years ago or 4. I don't know, like. I can't remember, honestly. Definitely in the past 7 or 6 years this happened. And so I thought that was like, you know, it's cool in a way. Like he's basically saying, no, like fuck you, like I'm not, you know, I'm never gonna put this sort of content out there for stupid people just being like, oh, you know, I'm into punk, I'm punk, you know, like what you have with social media now, I suppose.
Yeah, but that's
'Cause, I mean,
crazy. I didn't
yeah.
know about that.
Yeah, you should look up. I'm sure there's stuff out there online, but yeah, it's really cool. I think that he's like Vivian's son, and like
Yeah, like
that
that's
he
so
started like
punk.
Asian Provocateur, like
Yeah, the
such a
lingerie
cool brand.
It's really expensive, isn't
Yeah,
it?
really expensive.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say it's like the fancy.
Kate Moss was in the campaign once, and Prime, like so many like cool bands, like
Oh,
the like
wow.
collaborations and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
Anyway, I just thought I liked that.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. That's a
sort of
great place to end this episode. So yeah, go watch this documentary on YouTube if you're interested. You'll learn a lot, if anything, and you'll probably find some new bands you want to check out. But yeah, we will. I don't know what we're gonna do next. We might do another collaborative episode. We were talking about it yesterday, or 2 days ago. So yeah, but yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, and like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe, review. I'll put it in the notes. Do all that fun stuff. But we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.